Hello, my name is Mark Twight, and I'll be introducing you to the Protective Combat Uniform, guiding you through the process of putting the different pieces together to address different environmental conditions and levels of activity. I have two assistant trainers here with me. One is prettier than the other, but both are exceptionally well qualified. Speaking of qualifications, you might be wondering why you ought to listen to me tell you how to wear your long underwear. And it's because I have quite a lot of experience in cold weather and high mountain environments, and I have a pretty unique relationship with special operations. I spent 20 years climbing mountains professionally. I visited the Himalayas 7 times, spent 5 years living in the French Alps, a lot of trips to Alaska, climbed frozen icebergs floating off the coast of Antarctica, and I learned a lot of lessons that influenced the outcome of this clothing system during that time. In 1984, I began working as a technical advisor for a number of climbing equipment manufacturers, and what that basically meant was that my job was to break things and then to help them design things that were unbreakable. Later on, was instrumental in developing the regulator system for Patagonia, and that was one of the first soft shell systems developed, and it was really the foundation for what became the Protective Combat Uniform. So because of this work on the Patagonia regulator system, the PM for SOF Survival at the Natick Soldier Center contacted me and asked, that was in January of 2002, and asked me if I would be interested in helping him develop a new cold weather clothing system that brought the military clothing system up to speed, something comparable or even better than what was on the civilian market at the time. Since 1999, my wife and I have run a small company called Mountain Mobility Group, and we provide training to individuals within the Special Operations Forces. Most of this training is related to the mountain environment. We teach guys how to survive in cold weather, acclimatize to high altitude, and move around in the winter environment. But we also do some R&D on not only on cold weather clothing, but on more technical items within our areas of expertise. To diversify the training and offer the broadest possible perspective, we hire the most qualified assistant instructors and trainers to help us out. And that's why I've got Vince and Carolyn helping me. You can check out their bios in the special features section of the DVD. First, I'll introduce Vince Anderson, who is not only one of the best sport mixed climbers in the world, but 2005, he and partner Steve House climbed what is arguably one of the hardest routes in the world when they made a first ascent by a new route up the Rupal face of Nanga Parbat. Now, in Nanga Parbat, it's 26,650 feet high. It's in Pakistan, and the Rupal face is 14,000 vertical feet. And they climbed up and down the route in 8 days round trip. The face had never been climbed faster than about 3 months, and that would maybe make you think that a guy like that is invincible, but no one's invincible. And a couple years ago, Vince took a fall off a sport mixed route near Ouray in Colorado, went 140 feet, ripped 2 pitons out of the rock, and was caught by a 12 centimeter ice screw, and that's about how long 12 centimeters is. It's not really meant to take a 140-foot fall, but that's what you got. And after walking away from that, about a week later, he fell 12 feet from a route that would be considered relatively safe because it's bolt protected, completely overhanging. But the rope pulled tight, and he caught him and swung into the wall and shattered his talus. One of the reasons Vince is helping us on this project is because he participated in the first materials down select user jury in Bozeman, Montana in March of 2002. He's an internationally certified mountain guide and runs his own business, which is called Skyward Mountaineering out of Ridgway, Colorado. Carolyn Parker is as tough and capable as anyone I have ever met, male or female. And to illustrate that, I'll tell you a little bit about the Mount Taylor Quadrathlon, the 2005 version, which is it's a multidisciplinary race that starts off on a bike, and then you do a little running, and then some Nordic skiing, and finish snowshoeing. It's a 42-mile round-trip race with 5,000 vertical feet of elevation gain and loss. And sometime in the first, during the run, your calf muscle cramped, right? And instead of quitting like most people would, she gutted it out and suffered through a 25-mile-an-hour headwind on the bike to finish winning her age group, 7th female overall, in 5 hours and 14 minutes and some seconds or something, right? Carolyn balances her work between being a professional climber and a personal trainer. She's an AMGA certified rock guide, owner of Sun Toucher Mountain Guides, which is based in Albuquerque, New Mexico. And she can kick your ass and she can kick my ass in the gym on demand. The objective of the DVD is to familiarize you with the Protective Combat Uniform. And I'm just going to call it PCU from now on because I can't say Protective Combat Uniform for the entire DVD. PCU is a multi-level system that's designed to protect you from cold and wet weather and improve your warfighting capability from 45 degrees all the way down to -50. The materials that we've used, they're lighter, they're more compressible than what is currently issued, which means your pack's going to be smaller and you'll carry less of a load. And the system didn't come around by accident. I'm going to stress this now and later in the DVD. I will dress differently than Carolyn will dress or than Vince will dress for the exact same environmental conditions and the exact same level of energy output. So what we've had to do is come up with a system that the heavy sweating meat eaters can use and the shivering 3% body fat triathlete can use. And this means that how you dress is largely individual. You have to test, you have to experiment, you have to know before you go into the field. So don't leave it until the last minute. Practice when you have the conditions that you can practice in so that basically your clothing choices are automatic once you get out in the real world. It's really important that the clothing system be adaptable to a broad range of weather conditions and have a lot of flexibility in terms of how you can use it to address different levels of effort as well. So whether you're moving slowly at a patrol pace or you're moving really, really fast, you need to be able to configure the clothing system to preserve heat or to dump heat to protect you from the elements. And it would be really easy, of course, to choose the clothing system for a particular mission if the weather forecast was correct and the mission went exactly as planned, but the weather forecast is never right and the mission often doesn't go as planned. You might start missions, riding in a helicopter with the door open. Or you might be doing some kind of boat transit and be out there for an hour or several hours, getting wet, getting pounded. When you get there, you're basically cooling down, shivering, and then suddenly, hey, time to get off the chopper and run toward the objective and be 100%. That's a really difficult thing to ask your clothing system to do, much less yourself. To survive and thrive in the conditions one finds in the mountain environment, skilled outdoorsmen use synthetic fibers for insulation and protect them with a shell that's waterproof and breathable in an effort to stay dry. But in our experience, we found that since it's impossible to actually stay dry, we've kind of given up on staying dry altogether. This refers back to an experience when Scottish climbers who were climbing in arguably the worst conditions in the world, and they realized that no barrier could protect them, that could keep their insulation dry, so they started using a shell that wasn't waterproof, but it was only water resistant and it was windproof, combined with a synthetic layer that was configured in such a way that whatever sweat they built up on the inside traveled at high velocity, essentially, to that breathable shell and dispersed it to the outside world. This soft shell type system that was developed in Scotland is the foundation of what we're doing today. What we've done with PCU is to develop a system that works across the broadest range of conditions that one finds in special operations, that addresses any possible conditions from 45 degrees all the way down to -50. And it's durable, it's functional, and in my opinion, this is the best the best cold weather clothing system ever developed, military or otherwise.
So Mark, how did the PCU project get started?
It was fall of 2001, and guy was in Afghanistan. It was a guy who actually later went on to win the Silver Star, and he called the project manager for the soft survival and said, hey, we're freezing our asses off over here and you got to do something about it. And it was within just a couple of months that we had user juries representing all of special operations with us, and we ran through all of the different fabrics, made some choices, and it was probably 7 or 8 months after that the initial fielding began. All of the feedback was integrated into what we're wearing right now, which is PCU Block 1. One of the things that you can configure on your own with the level 5 pants is something that makes the pants work as a gaiter. So if I was walking around deep snow right now, I'd end up getting a lot of snow in the top of my boot. So inside the leg cuff, or the ankle cuff on the level 5, there are tabs on each side, and these are delivered with some elastic cords that you can put in here so you can tie the pants down over the boot to act as a gaiter. You can use pieces of 550 cord. Every level 5 is delivered with pieces of cord so that you can do that. It can be something that's used on exposure suits as well, and also for the level 7. So if you don't have gaiters and you need them, a piece of cord that weighs a few grams can substitute, especially with this shell. To understand how and why the PCU system works, we're going to have a little physics lesson, and I think you're going to wish you had some coffee on board for this. I'll start with the assumption that you're familiar with Gore-Tex, whether you've worn a jacket or at least heard about the product. It's known as a waterproof, breathable fabric, which means that water can't come in from the outside, but sweat, which otherwise might build up beneath a shell fabric, it will actually pass through. Gore-Tex is a Teflon film, has about 9 billion pores per square inch, and those pores are smaller than a drop of water. But they are large enough for vapor to pass through. So the drop of water is going to hit the film and not be able to pass through, while vapor, sweat from the inside will be able to pass through to the outside. The reason that this happens is because there is a difference in the pressure, or a difference in temperature between the inside, what we call a microclimate, anything inside your insulation or inside the shell. We call that the microclimate. The macroclimate is outside. If there's a difference in temperature between the inside and the outside, the natural flow or the natural order of things is to equalize. If you're looking at the graphic, if it's 100 degrees on the left side of the line and 45 degrees on the right side of the line, and that line represents your shell jacket, then the natural order will be to equalize. And all of the humidity or temperature on the inside is trying to get to the outside, and that's what's driving the moisture through that shell or through the insulation. It can pass through as vapor, or it can, if the temperature gets a little bit too cold and it turns to liquid, it can wick along these materials and eventually through the shell to the outside world. It's a bit less efficient than if it's vapor, but it is still working and functioning. But there are conditions where a shell isn't going to work as well. And the first thing is that if we're talking about a shell that has a lot of pores in it, if that gets saturated on the inside, then it takes a tremendous amount of pressure to drive vapor through liquid water. That slows down the rate of vapor transmission. The next thing will be is if that shell happened to get really cold and the moisture that was built up on the inside of it froze. There was one situation in the winter of 1990-91, and had a jacket that wasn't breathable enough, and my insulation actually had a pile coat underneath, and the thing actually froze to the outside, or to the inside of the shell, which made the thing like a suit of armor, and everything cracked and popped every time I moved. The other situation will be is if you're static and you're just losing heat. You're not producing enough heat, so there's not a great enough difference in the temperature between the microclimate and the macroclimate. At that point, the rate of moisture transfer to the outside will be reduced. So those are 3 situations where a shell, which is supposed to be both waterproof and breathable, won't breathe as well as it could if it were something that was water resistant and highly breathable, which is the direction we're headed with PCU. The sharper tools in the shed will have already realized that it's the differences between the microclimate and the macroclimate that cause this, a waterproof, breathable garment to work. And so when we find ourselves in conditions of really high humidity, if it's 100% humidity inside because you've been moving hard and sweating a lot, and it's close to 100% humidity outside, there's no reason for the moisture to go from the inside to the outside. When we try to make one garment do everything, it is waterproof, and we're trying to make it waterproof and we're trying to make it breathable, which are working at polar opposites. We're trying to illustrate the point here that this is a compromise, and in some situations, a compromised garment doesn't work. So with PCU, the direction we have headed is to provide a garment that is waterproof and a garment that is highly water resistant but very breathable. The present systems favor impermeability over breathability because the system has to protect a cotton polyester or cotton nylon blend of the BDU on the inside. And the problem with cotton is that it will absorb 100% of its weight in water, basically. And once it's wet, it never does dry out. So it makes sense to try and protect it. But if we take the cotton out of the system and replace it with purely synthetic fibers, things that can't absorb any water, things that will allow water to wick through them, if they do get wet, or things that dry out really, really fast, suddenly we don't need the impermeability that we needed when there was a cotton component to the system. What we've done is to field a system that has a broad spectrum of components of multiple levels that will address whether the person is static or whether they're moving, whether they're producing heat or losing heat, whether it's hot or cold, whether it's wet or dry. And any system based on compromise cannot address all of those factors. So this is why we've had to individualize the components of the system. PCU is a constantly self-drying soft shell system that's reinforced with hard shell components. And what that means is that a soft shell system is not designed to keep you dry, because nothing can keep you dry in all conditions. What a soft shell system does is it dries out as fast as technologically possible once it does get wet. And who cares if it gets wet if you know it's going to dry out? So what I have to explain, I think, about that is that, how can a system protect you or keep you warm or whatever if it's not designed necessarily to keep you dry? So remember those Scottish climbers that I was talking about? Once they realized that they couldn't stay dry, they placed emphasis on clothes that would dry out really fast once they got wet. And Vince, can you hand me the... Actually, yeah, we'll just take this one. So this is an original soft shell design, and it's relatively primitive in execution. This is the foundation of all modern soft shell clothing, and the reason the system works is because it's constantly self-drying. And the main points to remember are that the materials cannot absorb any water. The insulation fabrics provide a straight and efficient path along which any moisture from sweat will move towards the outside. The shell itself is windproof, but only water resistant. A soft shell creates less of a barrier to vapor transmission than a hard shell does. So that means that it requires a lot less pressure on the inside to move moisture through it. As an example, this graphic right here is showing that precipitation from the outside might get partway into the system, but the pressure is so great that it's constantly driving it out. And so I'm drying next to my skin. I'm reasonably comfortable. The system might, the insulation might be getting wet, but it can't absorb any water, so it doesn't matter. And I know it's going to dry out later. As soon as if I stop, I put something on, either to protect it or another type of insulation over the top of it to move the dew point further out into the insulation and dry out the layers closest to my body. When we were doing the original development of this, some of what I did was to, I'll take my clothing system, put it in a garbage bag, fill the garbage bag with water, tie it in a knot, throw it in the back of the truck, go out to the trailhead, put everything on, and start a stopwatch and see how long it takes to dry. And obviously the natural extension of this is one of my favorite things, which is to tell soldiers to take a little swim, take a little chili dip, wear in their system, and then see if they can rewarm themselves or walk it dry. And generally, you can develop a dry microclimate next to your skin in about 15 minutes and be completely dry in about 60. Of course, there are areas like, say, around the waistline or the wrist cups where gravity drives water and that will remain wet for longer. But once you have all that water saturated in that area, it's super easy to just wring out and get rid of it. But the systems do dry out, and again, who cares if it gets wet when you know it's going to dry out? So a lot of times have to pack the step down before stepping into it to make sure you don't lose too much energy later by stepping onto it and then breaking it like that. So I'll take 2 or 3 steps in here while I'm still on my weight on the back leg, build up a good step, give it a chance to freeze, and then step onto it. Also gives an opportunity to the people behind me to have a bigger bathtub to step in.
You want to make sure that you take a reasonable average step so you're not creating extra work for someone who's a different height, leg length, that kind of stuff, because it can get fatiguing after a really long period of time.
Yeah, tall guy, short guy. When I went to Kazakhstan in the winter, I had a really short French partner, and he kept telling me to take shorter steps. 2 weeks into the trip, I hated him, so I kept saying, you, and I took longer steps. A lot of times, the most efficient thing to do is to take a really short stint at the front brake and trail and let the guy behind you take over, because right now, in this situation, Carolyn's totally drafting, getting a really good rest. So I'll just step out of the way and let Vince pass through. Yeah, just finish it. And then I'll step in behind and I'll get my rest break. I never want to get so tired that I can't recover. I start getting to that point, I wave the guy behind me through so that I can get in the back and draft.
So one important thing when you're out breaking trail through snow, even if you're following a track like this, and especially at altitude, is to incorporate what we call a rest step. And that's simply taking a step and taking a brief pause on your downhill leg with it locked off in a more of a skeletal position, so your weight's resting on the skeletal frame. And that brief pause gives you a chance to rest slightly with each step. This is especially important at altitude, where you may have to take a few breaths in between each step so that your body doesn't go anaerobic and you start to over fatigue yourself.
The increased breathability of the system expands its window of utility. Let me explain. Excess heat and moisture pass out of the system more efficiently than they would with a hard shell type system or something that was a little bit less breathable. So the body temperature remains more stable with less fluctuation, which means you don't have to change your clothes as often, and it means you don't have to, you won't be fighting for ventilation zippers or something like that, or trying to get your load carriages from pressing on you all the time, as you might when you're using a less breathable system. One of the most important characteristics of PCU is how it fits, and the sizing has been scaled to accommodate operators, or the standard size of the operator, which is a little bit larger. Someone who has a 400-pound bench and a 600-pound squat is going to need garments that are a little bit larger than the average civilian. So a size medium in PCU will be a little bit larger than your standard medium on the civilian side. All of the components of PCU incorporate some stretch into the materials, with the exception of level 6, level 7. So I can grab the sleeves here and bend my arms, and all of this stretches all the way across the back of the shoulders, and that allows me great freedom of mobility, which is an important characteristic in the sort of higher tempo type operations.
If I have very baggy pants, for example, I run the risk of catching my crampon or my snowshoe on the pant, which can cause me to trip up, which sometimes isn't acceptable. And in addition to that, it just makes things a lot easier when you're out climbing to not have a big baggy garment, so that I can grab things from my pack or my harness as I need to use them when I'm out climbing.
One reason we've been able to do this is because we've sort of inverted the layering system, in the sense that this is my action system, and I'm going to layer insulation over the top of it, or a hard shell impermeable type layer over the top of it when I stop moving.
So we've arrived at a place where it's good, safe, we're gonna take a little break, but we might be tired, not paying attention, maybe we have to do this quickly, but we always have to make sure that we keep track of things, and don't negligently just kind of take our gloves off and put them down to get into our pack. We wanna keep track of things in an organized fashion. When you're going through your pack, you take your water bottle out, don't set it down on its side so it can roll. Firmly plant it in the snow if you need to. These are general things that they don't take that much time, but the time they save and the hassle factor that can arrive from losing, equipment that could be life-saving is super important.
Anytime that it looks like it could be closed, it is closed. That way I know that I can grab it and run if I need to.
Anytime I stop after I've been on the trail for a while, I like to pull out my warmer jacket and put it on. Even if I'm hot from hiking, because probably if I'm hot from hiking, I'm also sweaty. And as soon as that sweat starts to evaporate, especially in a little bit of a breeze like we have right now, I'm gonna cool off. So it's often the first thing I do when I come to a rest point is pull that jacket out and put it on. And sometimes it's hard to remember because you are warm right when you get here, but this is one way to keep warm and to keep these garments working as they should, to move that dew point further away from your body and pump that moisture away from you and dry you out a little bit.
If you stop when every person has a need, you're never gonna get up to the top of the mountain. So general rule is everybody deals with what they need to deal with, whether, get a little drink, get a little water. It's gotta be a team effort. Gotta use the bathroom, just try. We all do it and we all go again so that you have efficient, effective movement of a large group.
If we stop, take a break, and you put the puffy coats on, everybody needs to be to pay attention to when it's time to leave, and then it's up to the leader to say, hey, we're moving out in 5 minutes, and that's the indication that, hey, you need to get the jacket off and be ready to move, so that 15 guys aren't waiting for one guy to try and figure out how to get his stuff back in his pack. Within PCU, there are two subsystems, and we've grouped them into action and static. And the difference there is that the action system, or action as a descriptive term, implies that the person is moving under their own power, that they are producing heat rather than losing heat, and the clothing system must prevent accumulation of heat. The static system is when you're stopped, when you're not moving, and at that point you are losing heat, and the clothing system needs to slow down or prevent the loss of heat at that point. I want to talk a little bit about heat loss, because this is an important thing to know, and important so that you choose the right components to address different types of heat loss. The first thing that we want to talk about, anytime you have a system that's highly breathable, you are going to be subject to evaporative heat loss. That means that when the moisture is evaporating off your body, you have a rapid cooling effect. I mean, everybody has probably felt when, hey, I'm carrying a pack and I'm humping, so I have a lot of sweat buildup on in my clothes right under the pack. I stop and take the pack off. You have what we call a flash off, is that all of a sudden when you're in a cold environment, as soon as all that moisture that's built up between the pack and the insulation is exposed to the atmosphere, boom, it evaporates and you experience rapid cooling. The second type of heat transfer or heat loss is convective. And what this means is that there's air moving somewhere over the surface of your body, and moisture and heat are being transported away by this air movement. It can happen when a wind is going over you, but it can also happen just by raising the arms on sort of a baggy jacket and sucking cold air in the bottom, so you have some kind of air circulation inside the garment. This is another reason that the fit of the PCU is important, because you don't have the bellows effect or a chimney type effect unless you want it. The third type of heat loss is conductive heat loss, and that's a direct transfer of heat to an object or to the environment around you. So that means you're sitting on a cold rock and your ass gets cold. It means you're standing in the snow, your feet get cold. As the heat is transferred maybe through the steel shank of a boot. You can have direct transfer into water if you're in a cold body of water. The fourth form of heat loss is radiant heat loss, and this is an infrared release to the atmosphere. You would experience it most clearly on a clear, cold day when the sun goes down. It's like someone flips a switch. So one last form of heat loss that I'd like to sort of introduce is a combined heat loss, which has to do with breathing in extremely cold air in a mountain environment. And what happens is you might take in really low humidity, very cold air into your lungs, and the humidity in your lungs is close to 100%. And so when you exhale that air, you're losing heat both in an evaporative and in a convective manner. You've got air circulating, which is convective, and then you're blowing out the moisture as well. One last concept I'd like to address that has to do with heat transfer is this phrase that we often use, which is warm when wet. What we're using this term as is a comparative statement, and that means that, hey, it's warm, that a synthetic insulation that we've used throughout the PCU, all of those insulations are warmer when they're wet than cotton or down, for example. Now, the fact that we have these synthetic insulations, the reason that they are warmer when they're wet than cotton or down is the fact that the threads themselves can't absorb water. They can only hold water in the matrix between the threads, and that means you can simply wring the water out and be on your way, and the system will dry out. The components that comprise virtually every level of the PCU system are made from solid plastic, and so that means that the threads themselves can't absorb any water. Okay, can I have that? Thank you. And since the threads themselves can't absorb any water, the only way for moisture to be held here is within the matrix. These fabrics are constantly self-drying, and the components within the action subsystem are considered a soft shell, which means there's no impermeable barrier between you and the environment. So making the system work is contingent on maintaining the pressure differential. The components in the static subsystem might be viewed as barriers. The level 7 is a thermal barrier to prevent heat loss when you are in a static position, not moving and not producing heat. Level 6 is a barrier between you and the outside environment, and to be used in a situation where the precipitation is so great that it overruns the pressure differential that makes the level 5 shell work. So imagine you're dropped off somewhere and you have your old insulation type system, which is comprised of a hard shell, and because the hard shell causes you to heat up really rapidly, you're not wearing very much underneath it. Let's just say some kind of base layer insulation under the hard shell, load carriage over that. You move 2, 3, 4, 5 kilometers, whatever it happens to be, and in that time you generate a lot of heat, and that causes you to sweat, and you have a lot of moisture built up in your system. Now you got to stop, and maybe you have to count some trucks or look at some people for a little while, and you might be there for an hour, maybe 2 hours, maybe overnight. So at that point, you have to strip off your load carriage, strip off the shell in order to add insulation underneath. Maybe you even stripped off the wet base layer and put a dry one on if you happen to be carrying it. With the new system, what we do in the exact same situation, you would layer insulation immediately over the top. There's nothing to take off at that point. You've got a wind-proof layer in the wind shirt that you're wearing under this piece of insulation already. So in order to dry that insulation out, you're going to put a high loft piece over the top. If it's precipitating, you're going to put a hard shell piece over the top to protect you while you're not moving. So in this graphic that's up on the screen right now, you can see that the long sleeve level 1 is worn under level 2 with a level 5, which is your uniform piece, over the top of that. Now, if you were moving hard and fast and you developed a lot of sweat and a lot of moisture built up inside that, the typical reaction would be to just, hey, I want to get rid of this. I want to take this off. But the problem with taking it off is, hey, it's going to be wet when you put it back on. I have to do something to try and dry it out. The dew point where vapor changes to liquid is right in level 2. And when I need to move that out in order, I want to start the next block of movement with every bit of clothing that I have as dry as is possible. So what happens when I put the insulation over the top is I move the dew point out somewhere, ideally into the middle of this high loft insulation. And that means that gives the level 1, the level 2, and the level 5 the opportunity to dry out while I'm static, while I'm looking at something. And then when I take that insulation off, sure, it's wet, but who cares, because I know it's going to dry out. I stuff that in my pack and I start the next block of movement, or whatever I'm going to do next, with relatively dry clothes.
So sometimes it can be a lot easier going if you're going through deep snow to get onto open ground, be it rock or exposed dirt. Even though the climbing might be a little more tricky or scrambling, it can often save you energy by not having to break through really deep snow.
The silk weight t-shirt and boxers are plugged into the system to use on the warmer end of the spectrum. This isn't something I would use in a truly cold weather environment because the really high thread count allows this to hold on to a little bit of moisture. But what that means is that in a warmer environment, you can use this as a standalone piece, maybe when you're doing PT or something like that, and whatever you sweat into that fabric will be released slowly into the atmosphere, and it will cool you through the evaporative process. If moving moisture away from the skin or a little bit of extra warmth is of primary importance, then the level 1 long sleeve shirt and bottoms are what you should be wearing. This layer, it wicks moisture really efficiently. I mean, it's something if you're in a situation of high output and you want to maintain a dry climate next to your skin, this is the piece of choice. If you overheat, there is a zipper. You can vent using that zipper a little bit. Also, this piece is a little bit thicker, so it creates a little bit of standoff between the skin and whatever shell type piece you are wearing over the top of it. This piece is extremely versatile. It can be worn over level 1 to increase the warmth, or if it gets really cold, this can be used as your sort of expedition weight or next to skin layer on its own. It's something that works really well under camis. Essentially it's the mother of all wickers. The waffle pattern, which you wear facing your skin, they basically act like little pillars, and those things suck moisture off of your skin and then spread it out over the larger, or the big flat surface area on the outside, and keep you dry next to your skin. This particular piece is it's really warm. We put it in either the action or the static group. If you're going to use it for action, it will have to be really cold because this piece is exceptionally warm. If you decide to wear it in a cold environment and you put it on under armor, I mean, that's basically the gateway to a heat injury. This thing does have a full zip. You can wear it under something, you can wear it over something. One of the properties of this particular jacket is that it dries out really fast. So if you know that you're going to get saturated and have to and walk the piece dry, this might be a good choice for that situation. This is the first wind shirt fielded to the military, and it is one of the most versatile pieces in the entire PCU. It's got a full zipper, but essentially, which means you might think to wear it as a shell on the outside. But it is intended to work inside the system as an integral component inside your insulation and shell package. If you're going to use it as a shell on the outside, you need to be paying attention to the durability issues. That means getting in and out of a vehicle or crashing through brush. It's not as durable as level 5, but it's not intended to be. This is a piece that works really well for an E&E type situation, something that stuffs down really small. You can put it in a cargo pocket or somewhere in the load carriage, and it can help retain up to 300% more heat in your system, so you get a huge bang for the buck. This is also a piece that works exceptionally well in a mobility type situation where you can wear it under your camis in order to cut the wind when you're in the door of a chopper or a vehicle. This is a very lightweight piece, and it could be the 6 ounces of something that could make or break the clothing system you choose to take into any particular environment. The level 5 soft shell is the workhorse component of the PCU. This will be your cold weather uniform. It'll replace your camis in cold weather because we need to get the cotton out of that system in order to make the PCU perform and to make you more combat effective. There's some tie downs inside the shoulder pockets for sensitive info. Inside the hand warmer pockets, you're going to find a drawstring, and that'll draw the hem tight around your hips. Guys have been using it, and it has been utilized well beyond its intended temperature range during the GWOT. This particular piece is sized to go over light load carriage, but not a full armor package. We've put the level 6 into the static grouping, but you can wear it while you're moving if necessary because it is breathable. This is not a substitute for a uniform. This piece is designed to go on. You might find yourself wearing it over your level 5 in some situations to keep out the most sort of horrible precipitation that you could possibly encounter. So it is sized in order to do that. If you'll notice that the pants have a 3/4 zip up the sides, which should allow you to pull them on over boots. And this is something that you would put on after moving if you're going to sit there for a while and it's in bad precipitation and you need to stay dry or protect your web gear or load carriage or whatever is underneath it. All of the level 7 pieces are high loft insulation. They're designed to be worn over other insulation and shell components of the PCU in a static situation. These are warmth type pieces. These are pieces you put on when you've stopped moving in order to dry out your action suit underneath them. they are protected shells. They are similar in performance to the level 4 or the level 5 in the sense that they are water resistant and they are breathable. So know that if it's super heavy precipitation, you might need to protect these items. Taking a look at the Type 1 jacket, you should see that it's sized like a regular jacket, and this is ideally designed for sort of a mountain recce type team. It's a cold weather jacket, something similar to what I might use in Alaska or the Himalayas. Inside the jacket, you'll see that there's some mesh pockets. Those are actually used to be drying out contact gloves or liner socks at night. You can, once you stop moving, you can take off the wet socks, put them in there, and basically cook them dry. This coat is it's a longer coat. It's still a high loft construction similar to Type 1. This particular jacket is optimized for mobility, which means that when you're all jocked up with somewhere to go, this piece is sized to go over armor and a light assault pack. That being said, there are drawstrings that you'll find in the hand warmer pockets, and you'll be able to suck this jacket down so it'll fit close if you're not wearing armor or an assault pack. It's not going to be quite as efficient as a Type 1, but it will work as a regular jacket. You'll also notice that there are 2 closure systems. There's a full-length zipper, and there's also a field of Velcro. I mean, if you need to hop out of a vehicle and do something to somebody, this will allow you to do so and gain access to everything on the load carriage or armor underneath. This is the first time an insulated vest has ever been fielded to the military. The reason that the vest is in the system is to double up the insulation on the torso to be able to hit the minus 50 degree requirement. We didn't want to make an entirely separate jacket. The level 7 pants are an overpant, and they're sized accordingly so that you can put them on over some other layers of insulation and the level 5, your uniform piece. They've got full side zippers, so you can put them on over boots or snowshoes. The seat and knees are reinforced just in case you have to move around in them a little bit, or if you're sitting on some kind of rough surface, you're not going to trash them. Although these items are not included with the PCU, are the accessories that you will use to protect your hands, your feet, and your head. So one of the first things that comes up with the hands is, the choice between gloves or mittens. And clearly, gloves offer dexterities, but mittens are much, much warmer. I believe that warm glove is a contradiction, and a truly warm glove does not exist. If I want dexterity, I choose a light glove because thick gloves are neither warm nor dexterous. If I want warmth, I choose mittens. So this is my approach in a mountain environment, and your approach in the field may be different. I think that the fingers and the palms of the gloves should also be sticky. They should be waterproof, and they should be durable. This is the palm we're talking about. And you get to pick 2. If they're sticky and waterproof, they're not going to be durable. If they're waterproof and durable, they're probably not sticky. So you will have to make some kind of compromise. Speaking about mittens, they are meant to be warm, so they should be insulated with a Primaloft or similar high loft insulation, which is very warm, yet it's fairly light and compressible. When we discuss, when we talk about feet in the cold weather environment, light boots typically have less insulation, so they're a bit colder, and they might require more attention and energy when you're moving on rough terrain. So whether you choose a light boot or a heavy boot, fit is the most important characteristic of your footwear. Whatever sock configuration you choose, make sure that the boots are not too tight. The old saying goes that if you're cold, put on a hat. 30% of the body heat may be lost through the head, and that can be either a problem or an opportunity when it comes to thermal regulation. In really cold conditions, I want to have more insulation on my head, but if I'm overheating in really cold conditions, I'm going to take that hat off and allow my head to cool the rest of my body. Hats vary by degree of protection. They might be thick, they might have an integrated wind shell, and if you are going to wear a helmet over your hat, make sure that the helmet is, the harness system is sized appropriately. This is a half bag, which is basically a 3/4 length sleeping bag, also known as an elephant's foot. There are several of these available, commercially, but this particular one, which is made by Sierra Designs, was designed specifically to work with level 7 Type 1 or Type 2 jacket. There is an overlap because this is 3/4 length. It'll come up to close to under the armpits, depending on your height. And this particular half bag is insulated with 3 ounces of Primaloft, but it's stitched into the bag in a shingled construction, so most of the areas that you would, where it's laying over the top of you, it will behave like 6 ounces of Primaloft. It is delivered with suspenders, so you can wear them to hold it up so it won't slide down from underneath your armpits. The bottom of the bag, the foot area, can be opened, so you can hike the thing up around your waist to go take care of some business, or run if you got surprised. The fact that there are many levels within the PCU system are what make it, what allow its great flexibility, but it can also be confusing. And what we can show you in this DVD are some standard configurations about how to put the different pieces together to address different environmental conditions and different levels of activity. But this is something that's largely individual, and it has to be trained, so don't just start pulling bits and pieces of PCU out of a bag right before you get on the chopper to go do something. It's tough to dress for constantly changing weather conditions and movement patterns. And modern materials actually make it even tougher because they dry out so quickly. What that means is any time that you're moving and maybe you missed it, you put a little bit too much insulation on, so you're sweating more than you wanted to, but that means that all that sweat is evaporating and you're cooling off really rapidly every time you stop. You can slow that down by putting the wind shirt, the level 4, into the system. What it's doing is slowing down the rate of evaporative loss. And this can be the difference between comfort or discomfort when you're moving around outside, especially if the wind is fluctuating. The wind shirt will take the edge off of those wind gusts and allow you to stay more comfortable with a more stable temperature throughout the course of the day. So I'm using the wind shirt to illustrate some of the creative possibilities that are built into PCU, and to give you an idea that okay, because I have a shell or a wind shell like this, that doesn't necessarily mean it goes on the outside all of the time. When I put the level 4 wind shirt, I sandwich it in between a couple of layers of insulation. Not only am I slowing down the evaporative heat loss, which will be helpful in some conditions, but I'm also causing I'm putting a frictionless layer essentially in between the two layers of insulation that allows me to move more freely. So this brings me to this idea of layers versus levels. And we've called things levels because we don't want people to get mired in the idea that layer 2 goes over layer 1 and layer 3 goes over layer 2. The idea behind the terminology levels is to illustrate the fact that you can combine things together in different ways to address a wide variety of conditions. What that might mean is that I put on level 1, the base layer, with level 4 wind shirt with a level 2 or level 5 directly over the top of that. It might mean that I put the level 7 alpha insulated vest inside the system under level 5. So this is just a way to alter the thinking so that it's just a bit easier to deal with when you're trying to piece the system together.
I think it's a decent location to build a shelter. Let me get out my probe and I'll see if the snow is deep enough, and then we can start probably packing down the snow a little bit, get through this. I just want to make sure the snow is going to be deep enough here, all right, before we start digging into it. It's a meter.
What is that in English?
It's a yard plus. Let's have you get out the tarp, and Mark and I can try and tamp out this snow a little bit. So kind of roughly, we just want to stake it out a little bit so we know where the perimeter will be. It's going to be a pretty bare bones minimum shelter, but it might just work. So I'm going to put a snowshoe at this corner here, and like this one here. We want to dig in a trench. We better start about a foot in from these borders. Okay. We can always make it bigger, but we can never make it smaller.
You'll notice that since we walked into this area, and even though we're stopped, we're still active, so nobody's put their puffy suits on yet. In a more maritime climate, as soon as I start digging in the snow like this, especially if I'm going to dig a cave, that's the time that I would get the hard shell on, because you get soaking wet. The AMGA standard for building a shelter here, this type of shelter that we're working on, is 30 minutes. So we got to have this thing done in less than 30 minutes. With a full-on snow cave, even if you're not making the heat sump or anything like that, I mean, just a full-on snow cave, to get it done, it will take about 1 hour per person. So gonna make a entryway here. I want to make it as narrow as possible, just enough to get in and out of the shelter. You can make a little outer slide. Steps are a little bit more convenient. Here, because it's sugary, we're going to end up with the outer slide. But I just want to make it as narrow as possible so that eventually I can block it off with a pack or something like that to keep the air from circulating inside the shelter. You definitely need to make some kind of a little breathing hole and keep passage for some air to move in through the doorway and then out through a chimney that you can make, just be the sort of the diameter of a ski pole. You can make it, with a ski pole or with an avalanche probe, something like that.
I'm trying to get it down as deep as we can for this snowpack so that we can taper the walls a bit to get a trapezoidal shape. That way there's going to be more room for the three of us in here because we have a pretty narrow tarp to cover the top. It'll also make it easier to cover the top with snow and not have the tarp sag so much by having a narrow opening.
They're both being super conscientious of their movements. They're not destroying the wall, hitting it with their bodies, hitting it with the shovels. I mean, they make it seem easy, but it's not, they don't want to start over.
Okay, I'm trying to make some supports for the tarp on the top because ideally I'd like to cover the tarp with snow, which will add to the insulation. And for some of you might enhance the camouflage ability of this shelter. We got these poles, we've spaced them out there. We've got a couple probes that we will use additionally, and I think we might even use a couple of the snowshoes to give a little bit more surface area here and potentially a crucial spot. Right there, potentially maybe here. Now we want to put the tarp over this shelter and try and get it as taut as possible. There's a few methods of doing it. In better snow, less loose granular, we would build a little bit of a sill or trench around it that we could put the edges of the tarp in to pack snow down on it. We'll try that a little bit. But what we're probably going to have the most effective use of here is tying the corners of the tarp to, in this case, snowshoes to kind of stretch it out. Still, we're going to try and get the edges lower than the top, and then we'll cover the whole thing with snow. Before we shovel the snow onto the top, let's see if we can get the margins tucked in, the edges tucked in a little bit under the snow. The tighter you get it, the more it's going to hold its structure once we put snow on it. We don't have to put snow on this, but it will stay warmer if we do. After we've set this tarp up and the shelter is made, it will actually be a little more structurally solid than it is right now. So that's why he's carefully shoveling this stuff on. Eventually it will start to harden to a little bit of a crust over the top. Once you cover this thing with snow, all the walls are made out of snow. It should stay right around 32 degrees Fahrenheit inside this thing, especially if we can have any way to plug up the door entry with our packs. That's looking good. Obviously, we're going to have to put some insulation down on the ground so that we're not going to get cold from losing heat that way. It's actually often better to have a better pad than a better sleeping bag. So we'll put some pads down, maybe even a tarp, then our sleeping bags, and be able to get in here. And we should have plenty of room. If we really wanted to, after it's roughly constructed, we could create more space by digging out a little bit more around the perimeter, but this will certainly be adequate for the night for the three of us. We will need to cook, and it will be a lot more comfortable and convenient to cook in here than to have someone go outside. The one consideration though, cooking, it seems like a great idea. It'll probably warm things up in here, but the exhaust from the stove can be quite dangerous. So anytime you're cooking in a shelter, snow shelter, tent, or whatever, you need to make sure it's well ventilated.
So now that we've finished our shelter and it's time to get inside, you have the option of the level 7 pants and jacket for sleeping, or we also have something which is not delivered with the PCU, but is an accessory, and it's made in the same colors, the same alpha green. This is a half bag or an elephant's foot. With a normal bag, I wouldn't be able to move or run. This one, we've had the bottom taken out. You can drawstring it shut as well. I can pull this on here and hold it up with these suspenders. Hike it up around my waist, and at that point, draw it down and still move around if I need to. I'll mate this up with the level 7 jacket. The jacket is oversized to fit over a lot of other items, in this case fitting over the top of the half bag. And the level 7 system is designed to be used with all of the pieces in conjunction with one another. So if I happen to have the pants and the half bag, the vest and the jacket, especially if it was a linebacker, I could certainly go down to -50. So depending on the shelter I might be building, I will choose my insulation accordingly. All right, so let's go hop in and seal up the door.
All right, we gotta make sure we bring the shovel inside in case we have to dig out.
All right, we're gonna have to seal the door off here. And we're gonna start by putting this pack down here. And then, I guess then it'll be time to eat. This PCU system is going to arrive, and it's going to be a big bag of clothes. And the tendency, I mean, if you've never spent much time in cold weather, the tendency is going will be to put it all on. And essentially, that's not what you should do. You need to dress smarter, not larger. And in that, what that means is to learn how the different components work together. Essentially, you're dressing for two different situations, two different sets of circumstances. You're either moving and producing heat and moisture, or you are stationary or static and losing heat and moisture. So when we talk about action, what does it mean? It means that you're moving, you're producing heat and moisture, so you're gonna wear just enough clothing to barely keep you warm while you're moving. If you get too hot and you overheat, that means you place greater stress on your muscles because of the higher temperature. They are more efficient when they're a bit cooler. And you're losing a lot of sweat, and whatever you lose through sweat, you got to drink. And if you can't get water along the way, then that means you got to carry the water. So I'd rather sweat less than sweat more. The main point here is to start out cold because you will warm up. If you start out moving warm and comfortable, you're going to overheat, you're going to sweat, you're going to soak your insulation, and then you're going to rapidly cool as soon as you stop. It's more important in a movement scenario to manage the insulation on your torso because you generate a lot more heat and a lot more moisture there. And if you make a mistake in your insulation in the torso, it's going to dramatically affect your core temperature, whereas you can get away with making a mistake on the legs. However, when you make your prediction for insulation or shell at the beginning of a day or beginning of a mission, you should try and make it as accurate as possible for your legs, because once that insulation is on, it's really difficult to change out. In a cold weather environment, as soon as you stop moving, it's important to layer up with the high loft pieces immediately so you prevent the rapid evaporative cooling from beginning. You will create a nice smooth sort of landing trajectory as the temperature comes down. You'll dry the clothing, the clothing in your action system out, and physically and psychologically, it'll be a lot easier to deal with. Now remember that the level 7 type 1 is sized to go over light load carriage, while the level 7 type 2 is oversized. It's designed to go over a full armor package with a light assault pack, and that's based on use for a mobility platform or something similar. All right, so we'll talk a little bit about crampons. We've been walking around in deep snow here, but there will be conditions, or there may be conditions that you'll encounter where having a set of sharp spikes on the bottom of the boots it will allow you to actually move. There are a variety of different types of crampons. For this application, what we'd like to typically use is not a technical ice climbing crampon, which has longer, very aggressive points, but a crampon that has a bit shorter points, so you have less leverage on the ankle when you're walking on a really hard, icy surface. So this type of binding system requires that you have a compatible welt for this piece of wire to go into. This particular binding system only requires that you have a substantial heel welt. It'll work on any type of boot that will fit into this system. This is the more universal choice to make. So I'd like to also point out with some of these, this model crampons is an anti-balling system, and a lot of times when you're walking, especially in wet snow, snow will get packed into the crampon and in this area and build up the size of a football and make it keep the points from aggressively biting into the ground. And in spring conditions or warmer conditions, this can be, a lot of accidents have happened because of this. And this particular crampon has an active anti-balling system. So every time you step down, this little bubble is being pushed in and then pushes back out. The snow doesn't actually have a chance to solidify within the points.
Another form of crampon that might be lesser known is called an instep crampon. And it's probably pretty apparent this is not going to handle the same degree of technical terrain as a more standard crampon. However, to provide slightly more security on firm snow and ice in certain conditions, it can facilitate faster movement through terrain. And a positive benefit would be a pair, you've seen here, it's 3 ounces as opposed to well over a pound for the other crampon.
And another important consideration here is since it weighs 3 ounces, it's something that you could have, that you might be more willing to take with you. If it's like, I don't know if I'll need them, I don't know if I'll need them, of course at that point you'll never take them. Whereas something like that takes up no space, can be stored flat like that in a pack and even in a cargo pocket, you're more likely to have them when you need them than not. One of the tools that was developed to help you configure the various components of the PCU to address specific situations that you might face is the Kwikpoint Visual User's Guide. And in the center of this, you'll see what we call the use wheel. The Visual User's Guide does not take the place of training. You need to accept some personal responsibility for the choices that you make in choosing each piece of the system and how it works. At the very top of the use wheel at 12 o'clock, we find ourselves in an action situation where we're moving. It's warmer than 45 degrees, but it's also wet. So in this configuration, there's a couple things you might do. So starting next to your skin, you will be placing some components of level 1, and that might be a silk weight t-shirt combined with the long bottoms, or it could be a full long sleeve top combined with the long bottoms. On the torso, directly over the top of that, I would suggest putting the level 4 wind shirt under there and then camis over the top. Yes, the camis are going to get wet, but you're moving. If you're out in this situation for a long period of time and it's raining and you're moving, you're going to need to carry some other components for when you stop. On the use wheel at 1 o'clock, we've got a situation where it's a wet environment and it's below 45 degrees and down to about 30 degrees, so right around the freezing point. These are really difficult conditions to dress for. Right next to your skin, you're going to start with level 1. In these conditions, I would recommend the long sleeve top and bottoms. And over the top of that, the uniform piece, the cold weather uniform piece, which is level 5. And in that situation, you've got a water-resistant shell. It's highly breathable. It's got some ventilation zippers under the arms to use if need be. Both of these pieces in this situation, these are things that will not absorb water, and you'll be able to walk them dry once they do get wet. Moving around the use wheel to 3 o'clock, we're still in an action situation, but we're looking at a dry cold situation from 30 degrees down to 0 degrees. In this situation, the guy who is a little bit cold, he might be wearing level 1 and level 2 underneath level 5. The guy who burns a little bit hotter might just be strictly using level 2 as his next to skin layer. Remember, it moves a lot of moisture, and again, the level 5 can be reconfigured as something to either protect you well from the elements, or it can be opened up to dump heat if you do overheat while you're moving. Down at 5 o'clock, we're moving around in a situation which is 0 degrees down to -50. And when you're moving in these temperatures, one of the first things I would stress is to really take care of your hands and your feet. In this situation, most likely, when you're moving, you're going to be wearing the level 2 next to your skin as a base layer. You might plug level 3 in here at some point if you're extremely cold, but the level 3 is quite a warm piece, and if you're wearing anything over the top of it like armor or load carriage, it may end up being too hot. So base layer level 2, maybe level 3, but for sure on the outside level 5. And you might plug in here level 7 alpha as needed. At the very bottom of the clock and appropriately placed, we've got a static situation from 0 degrees down to -50. And if you find yourself in this situation, it's a bad deal. So what we're going to do in this situation is to put level 2 as the base layer. You're going to put level 3 over the top of that and the level 5 uniform piece over the top of that. You do have a little bit more insulation over your torso because there are no level 3 pants, but it shouldn't matter because your legs don't need to stay quite as warm. Over the top of the level 5, we're plugging in level 7 alpha, which is the vest, and a level 7 jacket over the top of that, and level 7 high loft pants over the legs. Now, if it were -50, and we are saying static, that doesn't mean just lying there. You're going to have to move around a little bit because, hey, to go to sleep at -50 requires a pretty big sleeping bag, and that's not something that that you will probably be carrying. In the 7 o'clock position, we find ourselves in a static situation that might be from 30 degrees Fahrenheit down to 0 degrees. The recommendation would be simply to carry the level 7 jacket, whether type 1 or type 2, and the level 7 pants to address that situation. If you're a cold person, you might either toss level 3 or level 7 alpha, something in there as a supplement. But the main thing is we already know that you've got either level 2 and level 5 or level 1 and 2 and level 5. And we're going to layer the level 7 over the top of that in order to be able to remain static in conditions from 30 degrees down to 0. In the 9 o'clock position on the use wheel, we find ourselves static in conditions, temperatures from 45 degrees, maybe down to 30, really tough conditions, right around freezing to dress for. And we're in a wet situation, which is absolutely horrible. In this situation, we knew we were going into a wet environment, so we put level 3 into the pack just in case as our static piece, because we know that level 3 dries out really fast if it gets wet. And we've probably got level 6 as something to hold into our back pocket. And so in this situation, as soon as we're static, probably going to throw on the level 3 over the top of level 5 or underneath it, depending on how long you're going to be stationary. And then level 6, which is a true hard shell. If it's really precipitating, this is the place where the level 6 truly shines. Looking at 11 o'clock, we find ourselves static again. It's still raining, but the temperature is above 45 degrees. We've got some type of level 1, the level 4 wind shirt, and then the cotton nylon camis over the top of that. And so when we stop, there's a couple of things that can happen. The most likely scenario is that you take, since it is wet and you knew that you were going out into wet conditions, or that was possibly going to become wet, you have the level 6 with you. The most likely thing that will happen is that you put level 6 jacket on over the top of everything and the level 6 pants on over the top of everything, just to slow the evaporative heat loss, to keep things a little bit warmer and to keep rain from further cooling you down. If you are in a situation where you might be able to shuck down out of load carriage and take your cami top off, would be another useful possibility would be to have the level 2 and put that on over level 4 and then put the cami top on, back on over the top of that. And what that would do is to keep the wet cami away from your torso and keep you a little bit warm, and then put level 6 on over the top of everything. Nice.
Oh, check this out.
My.
Looks like we can keep knocking the snow down in here and we'll get a little bit of a bridge.
All right. You want the belay?
This would be nice.
The full belay?
Yeah, I'll keep working at it so I don't fall in.
Yeah. You keep the snowshoes on, or?
Yeah, I think snowshoes on would be best. Let me get some more snow down here. Okay, let me pack it in. You got enough, I think, to keep this out of the water. I can spread it out down here.
I'll send a little more in.
Knock some of this down too. Okay, yeah, come on over. Not so bad.
Pretty good quality snow bridge. So, I mean, something like this that you might assume would be covered in a heavy snow year. I mean, it causes, it didn't slow us down that much, but it could, depending on the difficulty, steeper banks on each side, a lot more water underneath that you couldn't actually build an artificial bridge. It could take some time, and I always think that sending the heavier guys pretty good to test anything in the foreground. With the PCU system, even if you do end up in the water, if you end up, wet to the waist or whatever, and you don't, depending on how cold it is, of course, it shouldn't really matter because you can basically walk it dry. The main concern in this situation would be the boots. You need to really take care of the feet. Some people might carry a spare pair of dry socks. If you're fairly certain that you're going in the drink, then remove the socks and deal with it. Go barefoot if you can. I mean, take the boots off entirely. If you have plastic boots, you can pull the socks off and the liners out and just use the shells so the bottom of your feet are protected going across in the water, but nothing of any critical value gets saturated. It's essential that you have a protocol in place and have practiced it to re-warm an individual after they've gotten into the water. The protocol or the rewarming drill would have to be fresh in everybody's memory with the responsibilities of each key player, basically an automatic response. Because if someone does go in the water, if they go in up to their neck or over their head, it's critical to get them out of the water immediately and start the rewarming process right away, because hypothermia is not that far away. You wouldn't want to just open your respective training manuals here and try and figure it out. You need to practice it in the rear. And who knows? You might be you might get the short straw. You might be the guy that tests the snow bridge. You might be the guy that goes in the river. So if it were me, I'd make sure that my guys were practicing as much as I am, because hey, the ass that gets saved might be mine.
So you'll need to experiment with this system to find the right combination of levels that will suit your individual needs for any given situation. And remember, this system has been designed to improve your capabilities in the field by protecting you from the environment and improving your mobility. And this is going to allow you to focus more of your time towards your task at hand.
Practical experience as well as knowledge of the basic components of the PCU system will be critical. Use the reference card that has been provided, study it, take it with you as a quick reference in the field that has been designed for you to do so, until you become familiar enough with your system to where usage of it becomes second nature.
And if there's any specific nomenclature that's not clear, there's a reference portion on the DVD that you can check out to learn the details of anything that we've been talking about. In conclusion, in my life, certainly there was a period of time when, I've got the freedom to do whatever I want. There was a period when I had the financial wherewithal to do whatever I wanted, which for me was going climbing all over the world. And I had the passport that allowed me to go all over the world. And that was just something I took for granted. It's something I never paid for. And now I'm old enough to realize that it's my duty and responsibility to put something back into the system. And this is how I choose to do it. I have a certain amount of knowledge, and I can spend that knowledge teaching doctors and lawyers how to recreate more efficiently. Or I can teach lessons to guys that might help them do their job better, and it's an important job, and it might actually help them survive and come home to their families. And so that's what I choose to do. This is, this being involved in this whole cold weather clothing system has introduced me to a lot of very cool people, a lot of people who've influenced me in how I go about my daily life now. And I would like to, give thanks for that, wish you good luck, and hope you all stay sharp.